We humans, huh? Always trying to figure out where we fit in. But what is it really? What makes us us? Is it our cultures? Our beliefs? Or maybe, just maybe, the things that divide us aren't as big as we think. Like there's something bigger underneath it all. Something that connects us all. And that's what we're tackling today, head on. We're diving deep into the work of philosopher Michel Serres. Specifically, his Récits d'humanisme. It's all about separation and connection, these two big forces that shape who we are. And look, like any good philosophical deep dive, we're not here to hand you the answers on a silver platter. We're here to explore, to dig in, to see what insights we can uncover. And Serres, he doesn't mess around. He comes right out and says separation and the cruelty that comes with it. It's like it's etched into our very being. But here's the kicker. We're not always so great at remembering it.
Yeah, and that's where things get really interesting. Because this idea, it actually lines up with some pretty major psychological concepts. Think about it. How much do you actually remember from when you were a kid? Not a whole lot, right? And the more intense the experience, like a trauma, the more likely we are to bury it. It's almost like our subconscious is holding on to things our conscious minds would rather just forget.
Kind of freaky when you think about it like that. And Serres, he compares these emotional wounds, these separations, to the Earth's core, hidden away down there beneath the surface, but man, incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. And I think that underlying power, it speaks to just how deeply we crave connection. Because think about it. If separation didn't cut us so deeply, would we crave connection so much? I don't know. It's almost like we're hardwired for it, like it's in our DNA.
It really does feel that primal, doesn't it? And Serres, he takes us way, way back. Like all the way back to the dawn of humanity. He paints this picture, this really vivid picture of our ancestors spreading out across the globe. And yeah, they were facing some serious challenges, brutal landscapes, predators, you name it. But then Serres throws us a curveball because he doesn't shy away from the human conflicts, the rivalries, the jealousies, the power struggles. I mean, some things never change, right?
It's true. And you know what I find almost eerie? It's how much those ancient separations still echo today. Think about it. The refugee crisis, mass migrations happening all over the world. This isn't just a now problem. It's like an echo of those very first separations, those ancient journeys. We're still grappling with the same things. Seriously, it makes you wonder how deeply rooted these patterns are. And it gets even wilder because he goes on to say that all these differences in climate and lifestyle, they actually created what he calls quasi-species within humanity. So you've got those tough as nails folks up in the frozen north who were built different from the ones enjoying the sunshine, and naturally that just leads to even more separation.
And that right there, that separation, it brings up such a fundamental question. This need to categorize, to separate, to label, is that just part of being human? Like, is it hardwired into us to draw lines in the sand? To say us versus them, even when we're talking about our own species, it's a question with a lot of weight. It really is. It's like the question of the ages,
Yeah.
And trying to wrap our heads around those divisions, that leads us right into Serres' ideas about stories. But we'll dive into that more after this. All right, so we're back and ready to untangle this idea of stories. Serres says, and I'm going to quote him here, "We all need a narrative to exist." Sounds kind of deep at first, right? But when you really think about it, I mean, our lives are stories, aren't they? All those experiences we collect, the memories, the relationships, it all weaves together. It's messy, it's complicated, but it's our own big ongoing narrative.
It's true, We're hardwired for stories. We crave them. And not just our own individual stories either. We're talking big picture stuff. Nations, cultures, whole civilizations, they're built on these shared narratives. They give us a sense of who we are, where we fit in.
It's like a roadmap almost. And Serres, he points out that these narratives, they can take so many forms. Think ancient myths, epic poems like the Odyssey, even personal confessions, memoirs. It's like each genre gives us a different lens, a different way of looking at what it means to be human.
And this is where it gets even cooler, because he connects these genres to our ethical intentions. He asks if they summarize the ethical intentions of our lives or the morals and fashion in the eras of their flourishing. Basically, could the kinds of stories we tell, the ones we're drawn to, actually reflect our values, our deepest desires?
Whoa, now that's something to chew on. Right. I mean, think about it. We're kind of obsessed with dystopian stories these days. What's that say about where our heads are at? Or think about the renewed interest in mythology and ancient wisdom. It's like we're searching,
Yeah.
looking for new stories, new narratives to guide us in these crazy times.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe that's the key. Maybe it's not about finding that single perfect story, the one that explains everything. Maybe it's about embracing all the different voices, all the perspectives.
Because at the end of the day, aren't those differences, those unique voices, what make being human so amazing, so complex? It's about figuring out how to coexist, how to appreciate those differences, but still see the common ground, the shared humanity underneath it all.
He uses this great analogy. He talks about a mountain path. Think about it. As we journey through life, our perspective is always changing, right? One minute you're surrounded by trees feeling totally lost. The next, you emerge into a clearing and bam, breathtaking view. It's all about where we choose to focus our attention.
And I feel like this is where those ideas, separation, connection, they really come together for Serres.
Right.
Because it's in those moments when we step back, when we look at the bigger picture, that's when we start to see the connections more clearly, those threads that link us together, even when things seem worlds apart.
He doesn't shy away from the tricky stuff either, the whole dance between the individual and the collective. Because, we need to belong, we crave community, but he's also real about how easily that can turn into blind faith groupthink.
Especially having lived through some of the most messed up parts of human history. He saw what happens when people stop thinking for themselves, when they hand over their agency to the group.
He talks about being disillusioned with those traditional forms of belonging, the rigid ideologies, nationalism, and he has this deep yearning for a new kind of collective, one that's built on shared values, a true understanding that we're all interconnected, no more lines in the sand.
He's not naive about it, though. He asks this really powerful question. What collective today is worthy of our consent, our belief, our actions, even the commitment of our existence? It makes you think.
It really does, because especially now when so many institutions have lost our trust, even the idea of collective action, it seems almost impossible.
It does. It feels impossible sometimes. But here's the thing. Serres, he doesn't leave us completely empty-handed, like lost at sea. He sees a flicker of hope in what he calls object worlds, these big, scary global challenges, things like climate change that demand we come together.
He suggests that maybe, just maybe, facing these threats, these things that go beyond borders and political lines, maybe that's what'll spark something new, a new kind of unity, a sense of purpose that brings us together instead of tearing us apart.
So it's like these object worlds, as overwhelming as they are, they could be the push we need, the kick in the pants to finally get it, to understand that we're all connected on a scale we can barely wrap our heads around.
He talks about how our technology has come so far. We've got this power now, the power to impact things globally. I mean, we're talking about the climate, even the very fabric of life itself. It's a lot of responsibility.
And that opens a whole other can of worms, doesn't it? The ethics of it all. Can we handle that kind of power responsibly? Will we use it to create a better future, a sustainable future? Or are we going to fall back into those old habits? Division, destruction, the same old story.
These are questions we can't ignore. They require us to actually think, to talk to each other, to listen to different points of view, and to really think critically, to look at the consequences.
That's what makes Serres so relevant, I think. He's not serving up easy answers, but he's giving us the tools, a way to approach these massive, complicated issues, to have real conversations, to look for solutions that work for everyone.
He reminds us that becoming human, it's a process. It's a journey, not a finish line. It's this constant back and forth, balancing our own needs with our responsibility to each other, to the planet. And it's a journey we have to take together.
Like he says, and I love this quote, we all exist, like ourselves, in and through history. So I want to hear from you. How have these ideas, separation and connection, how have they played out in your own life, your own story? Think about it. So we're back, and wow, what a journey it's been with Serres, right? This whole dance between separation, connection, how it weaves through everything, our own lives, the whole human story. It's a lot to take in.
That's what I love about Serres. He's like this master weaver himself. He takes these totally different threads, philosophy, science, myth, even his own experiences, and somehow he pulls it all together. It creates this tapestry of what it means to be human.
He really does.
Yeah.
He's not just some detached observer either. You can feel it. He's right there with us, wrestling with these same questions, trying to find meaning, connection in a world that feels, kind of fractured sometimes.
And you know what he blames for some of that chaos? noise.
Noise, like literal noise.
Well, that's part of it, sure. But he uses it as this metaphor, right? For the overload, all the information, the constant stimulation, it's like we're drowning in it.
Tell me about it. Notifications, news, traffic, it never stops.
Exactly. And Serres, he says, all that noise, it wears us down, not just mentally, but it messes with our sense of self, drowns out our own inner voice, our own story, and replaces it with this, I don't know, this generic version of reality.
So what's the antidote? How do we turn down the volume?
Well, he talks about how in the past we had these rituals, these practices that helped us filter the noise, make sense of the world. Think storytelling, music, ceremonies, they brought order, gave our lives meaning.
Right, like these anchors for our mind.
Exactly. But now, Serres says those rituals, they've been replaced. By what? Distractions. We're always plugged in, always entertained, but rarely present, truly present, with ourselves, with each other, with nature.
He even calls it a form of violence. All that noise. Says it silences us, stifles creativity.
And don't forget the noise inside us, the anxieties, the doubts, all those fears, they drown out our own inner wisdom.
So it's a double whammy. Battling the noise out there and the one in our own heads.
And that's where Serres brings it back to stories. But not just listening, consuming. He says we need to create, shape our experiences into narratives that give our lives meaning, that connect us to something bigger.
So it's about taking back our voices, our agency.
Yes. And not just individual stories either. We need collective ones too. New stories, new narratives that help us deal with the world as it is, that bring us together instead of pulling us apart. He uses this image, a tapestry. Each story, each perspective, it's a thread. And when we weave them together, that's when we create something beautiful, something whole, something that reflects the incredible, messy, amazing tapestry of human experience.
Wow. I don't even know what to say. That's powerful.
It is, isn't it? It's not about pretending we're all the same. It's about honoring those differences, weaving them together. Because in the end, aren't we all part of this one grand story, the story that started billions of years ago and keeps going every single day?
And we're all writing it together.
Yeah.
Whether we realize it or not. Our actions, our choices, even the stories we tell, they all matter. So as we wrap up our deep dive with Serres, I want to leave you with this. What story will you choose to tell? What threads will you weave into the tapestry? Keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep telling your story.